Rudeness is a big trigger for educators because you're like, I worked so hard for this lesson.
Children and young people don't know how to express that feeling of frustration by saying, I'm feeling really frustrated right now.
And from what you're saying, it sounds like at that point, the emotions feel really overwhelming. And it's like, well, I really don't want to cry in the middle of the class.
And I think another thing with behaviour is you can practice strategies completely away from the behaviour.
What we're looking at is the holistic view of behaviour, of like, well, what can we do before to build better, to build those skills, to build that emotional literacy. So we are starting with one of our sponsors for the event, which is the amazing Now Press Play. Like, I have spoken about them so many times. Yes, Verity, you get it. You get it. Has anyone used Now Press Play yet? There she is. Well, you're about to. It's going to be great. Honestly, like I was saying to Oscar, I don't really partner with many people. Like, they have to be completely aligned with myself, and it has to be something I've trialed so many times with loads of different children. And I love Now Press Play so much. So Oscar's going to tell us a little bit about it. Say hey, Oscar.
Hey, Oscar.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Oscar. I'm the co-founder and now director of product of Now Press Play. And Now Press Play create immersive audio adventures that allow children to live their learning. So to go there, to do it, and perhaps most importantly, to feel it emotionally. And what we're going to do today, if it's okay, is just dive straight in and try it out. So you've all got some headphones. So we're not going to turn them on yet. I'm going to give you some background first. You are a Year 4 class, and we're studying the Stone Age in history, let's say. And you are going to be immersed about halfway through this 25-minute long story. I don't think I need to explain what's happened so far. I think you'll pick it up. Yeah, just to say in advance that this is one of about 100 different experiences we have across from EYFS, Key Stage 1, and Key Stage 2. We're in about 500 schools who subscribe to us on a yearly basis. And each school gets 35 of these, a class set.
For more information on Now Press Play, catch Season 4, Episode 3.
Give us a little wave if you have experienced some rudeness. A little bit of rudeness. Yeah, we have. It's a big trigger. Yeah. Rudeness is a big trigger for educators because you're like, I worked so hard for this lesson. You will be grateful and you will love it. It's really, really hard. Can you shed a light on where rudeness comes from and how best for us to navigate that on the spot?
Totally. I mean, it goes over some things I've already said in terms of behaviour. Yeah. We're all essentially energetic beings, and so when we have emotions that haven't been fully processed, or we don't have a healthy channel for them to be expressed through, or children and young people don't know how to express that feeling of frustration by saying, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. Well, sometimes we don't know how to do that. So if they don't have that, or they haven't learned it yet because they're growing, you know, maybe their life circumstances impact on that, maybe trauma's affected the brain, so on and so forth. When they don't have that channel, they will channel the feelings that they have through these channels that they know get almost immediate response. Rudeness is like, you can get an immediate response out of that. And even though it's like a temporary high for them, and it's not long lasting, and actually when they come down again, they come crashing down, which is why they keep going up, and sometimes it spirals up and up. What happens is it's a temporary release. So I'm going to be rude because I know that's going to impact you, and that gets that energy out of my system. So that's where we have to teach them and support them for better ways to express. It's just a form of expression. Doesn't make it okay. We're not condoning the behaviours. And again, going back to what Dr. Emma says, this is why it's also really, really useful to label the feeling, because you can totally accept the feeling, but you are not condoning or accepting the behaviour. So I completely understand that you feel really frustrated right now, and you might even feel a bit angry. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with feeling those feelings for us as adults as well. However, when you felt that and you did this or you were rude to me, that is not acceptable. And I would suggest not doing that with the young person in the moment.
Yeah.
This is for when the nervous system has regulated back to calm, and then you can reflect back and then be really clear. I know I can, or you can, what you can do in the moment, apologies, you can in the moment label the feelings. That's actually really important. I can see that you're really, really frustrated. However, and then you can put the boundary in.
Yeah.
And then later on, you can go and say, I know you were really frustrated. However, that behaviour, what could you have done differently? Or how else can you communicate to me when you're feeling this way?
Would it be right to say that rudeness is almost a way to seek control in the moment?
Yeah.
Because they're feeling quite vulnerable, and from what you're saying, it sounds like at that point the emotions feel really overwhelming, and it's like, well, I really don't want to cry in the middle of the class, but what I can do to get control is to say something that makes me feel like I'm a bit more in a better position.
This is so important. So many young people, they will try to gain control via undesirable behaviours. This is so important. So rudeness, absolutely, totally agree with you. And so what I would say by that is, again, we change our perception to understand the whys behind the behaviour. So for young people who are trying to gain control, often it's because they don't feel they have control in other areas of their lives. And it can be extreme to maybe do with a history of trauma or whatever that may be, like significant trauma, or maybe not as extreme, where they just feel that I don't have a voice, I'm not seen and I'm not heard. Adults don't really listen to me, even sometimes when we think we are. The young person might not feel that way. And so when we think about control, for children and young people, that's their version of trying to get themselves to feel safe. So I always talk about providing young people with things like things like the language of choice. It's safe control. Yeah. So make sure you know your two choices, so they're not like these ridiculous choices that you're like, oh my god, I wish you didn't choose that one. So you can provide the choices, and you can do this. And I think another thing with behaviour is you can practice strategies completely away from the behaviour. So you can practice using language of choice with things like. Johnny, we always use the word Johnny, don't we, for some reason. Johnny, would you like to go and show that work or whatever you've done to Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so? Who would you like to take with you? Would you like to take so-and-so or so-and-so? Yeah. Rather than, because if they might choose someone, you think, oh gosh, please don't walk down the corridor with that young person. So you just practice using the language of choice with them for as many things as you possibly can throughout the day. That provides them with safe control. Then over time, along with obviously other behaviour support strategies, that will help to reduce their need to feel in control in other ways.
Yeah, because they feel like they are an equal partnership. Yeah. We have got a session on that called micro choices, and one of the ways we do that is when it's de-escalation.
Yes.
You know, okay, do you want to go in calm space or the reading corner? Let's just keep moving, people. You spoke a few times about boundaries, and I think that would be really, really helpful for everyone if you could just share a few of the ways that you kind of hold those boundaries, because we've talked a lot about, that's absolutely fine to feel that way. It's not okay to do that. But what are some of the ways where we can hold those boundaries?
So first thing I'll say about boundaries is I always say that boundaries equate to emotional safety. Expectations equal emotional security. So that's the first thing I just want to put out there, because sometimes there's this confused perception around boundaries needing to be like this, and we're doing it because we're trying to support that young person to feel emotionally safe. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say about boundaries that often many people don't think about, no blame or shame, we've got a lot of other stuff to think about, is to pre-plan them. So what often happens is we're in a scenario and then we're like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, oh, now I need to quickly put a boundary, and we can't think of what it is. So if you've got a young person who you're supporting and there's kind of repeat behaviours, which there often is, and you think this is actually where I draw the line, then what we can do is we can pre-plan that with the young person. So in a moment when everyone's calm, including yourself, you can sit down with the young person and say, do the whole separating them from their behaviour first, so they're able to absorb what you're saying differently. And then it can be, in this scenario, when you feel if this happens, if you throw a book across the room or whatever that may be, this is what's going to happen. So you've had time to think about what that's going to be way before. The young person also knows what that's going to be way before. Then in the moment, you're just reiterating what you've pre-planned. Yeah. And I would say just start with one thing first. Don't think, oh my gosh, but what if they throw the book and they do it? Just start with one of the main behaviours that you see being repeated and practice it with that before you try and expand it. And then what happens is, it's not going to be all perfect the first time. The young person's not going to go, oh, yes, we pre-planned this. Yes, I totally get that. That's not what's going to happen. But what will happen over time is the more you do, then after the incident, what you do is in a moment of calm again, when everyone's nervous systems return to calm, you go back over and you say, remember we talked about this, and you do not change the boundary. Even if that young person has a massive meltdown, this is what it's going to be. This is what whatever that is within your classroom, this is what it's going to be. And then in the reflection moment, if you like, you go over and say, that's why I didn't change my mind, because remember we discussed this is what's going to be, it's going to be, because I care about you and I want you to be safe. And then you just say the same thing again. So if this happens again, this is what's going to happen. It will happen again. You do the same thing again. And eventually what will happen is that young person, what will happen eventually in their brain, they'll start to know, oh, I know what the boundary is going to be. And that's what starts to help over time. Then that behaviour then starts to come down over time.
It almost sounds like building like a cognitive schema of it's like rewiring,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, okay, this is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Now we're going to rewire. You can't do that by saying it once.
Yeah.
It's over and over again in as many different contexts from different people. And we have something called visual support plans, where it's like, just as you said, it's the same thing. It's nothing, we're not going to do a dissertation. This is what, look at the appendix, what should you have done? Like, it's literally going to be like a sentence with visuals, but like everyone sees it, all the adults, you know, everyone's saying the same thing, and that's going to forge that for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us a little wave, honey buns, if you have ever been told that you're a bit soft as a teacher. Yeah, we get that a lot. So I wanted to hear your response to gentle guidance being too soft and how we can manage that as a community.
Yeah, totally. So first of all, I just want to say that my book's called Gentle Guidance. My surname's Gentles, so I had to do a play on the name, obviously.
I mean,
but then the other thing that I would say, and I'm saying this at the moment because I advise the government from time to time in regards to behaviour, I'm saying this in meetings as well. I'm saying things like boundaries equal emotional safety. Expectations equal emotional security. So what I'm saying is, sometimes what happens, that the thinking around gentle guidance or gentle parenting or gentle practices is that it's just soft. And now what I'm trying to say, and many others trying to promote, is that it's not. It's a balance. You don't get rid of the boundaries. But boundaries are for their emotional safety. But in addition to, you also have to understand that you need that connection with them. You need the attachment with them. Then once you have that as your base, then when you're implementing things like your boundaries and your expectations and your routine, you'll find that it's so much better over time once you've got that connection with the young person. So it's not about being soft, it's about re-understanding that it's a merge of the two, and actually the boundary is the same as emotional safety. And again, this is why I always say we're not condoning the behaviour. That's not what we're doing. We're understanding where it's coming from so we can be preventative rather than reactive. So we can create environments and spaces to support their emotional regulation that leads to the behaviours. That's why we need to understand it, not so we can go, oh, it's because of this. That's not the reason why.
It's kind of like shifting from one-dimensional view of behaviour, isn't it?
Yes.
Because the traditional one-dimensional view is they've done this and that's bad, and then we're going to punish them. Or if they do that, we're going to reward them. Whereas what we're looking at is the holistic view of behaviour, of like, well, what can we do before? To build better, to build those skills, to build that emotional literacy. And what can we do after so that we're not having repeated cycles? So it's about explaining that, and we're still having those boundaries, but we're also having that kind of multifaceted approach as well.
100%. And what I'd just like to add quickly is that it was said earlier that I've got an OBE, but I just want to explain where that came from, actually. The main place it came from for my services to education was when I created a nurture group project. This was like years ago. And I created a nurture group project. And what that was about was, at the time, it was the first of its kind nationally, which I didn't know at the time. But I just thought I was tasked with this task, so I just got on with it, because that's what you do, don't you? You get on with your job. But I didn't know it was the first of its kind nationally, because it served a borough, where usually nurture groups are just within one school, where the nurture groups I created was serving an entire London borough. So children and young people would be referred to the nurture group, and then we do an intervention with them for about 15 to 20 weeks, and then we integrate them back into their mainstream school. Now, this intervention was all about everything we've just been talking about. It was about the attachment, it was about boundaries and emotional safety, it was about connection, co-regulation, all these things that some people emotions that might consider soft, but that was the basis for the nurture group. And the results from that, it was a 95 to 100% success rate year after year after year of integrating these young people who'd been to the nurture group intervention back into the mainstream school. Then we tracked them all the way through to secondary. So we, just didn't want to make sure they're then, being excluded or whatever later on. So that's what the data. That's where the data came from. So when people talk about, this gentle methods being soft, what I always talk about, that's why I bring the data in and I say, but that's what that intervention was based upon, and look at the results for these young people.
I think we need to give a little clap for that. That is incredible. That is so amazing, honestly. And to have that data, and that's amazing what you did for all those children. So we always finish with a mantra. So what mantra would you like to leave our besties with?
So what I would like to say is that I think it's really important for us to understand that behaviour support is a mindset first. And I always say that I would even go as far as cheekily saying it's about 50% of the work done. If we can change our perception of the way we perceive behaviour, everything else that comes after is a thought, feeling, action, not for just the young person, but for us, everything can change. Now, it's not a walk in the park, but that's what I would say. Like, we've got to recognise it's not, please give me more strategy and tell me what to do. It's not about what you do, it's about who you are while you're doing it, because children and young people learn more from what they see from you than what they hear from you. I know I've said a lot of things, but I've got one more sentence. Sorry, I know it's a lot of phrases, but I've always got lots of phrases. And then the other thing that I would say is if you're in a situation and you think, I can't immediately change this situation right now, but what you can do right now is change your thinking. So if you've got a young person who is behaving in a certain way and you're like, I'm in the mode where I have to be reactive, that's fine, you've got to do what you have to do, but you can change your thinking in that moment. This isn't personal to me. They're really distressed, they're overwhelmed, etc., and so on and so forth. And in that moment, your thinking can change, which will also support you as well as the young person.
I love that. That's so powerful. Marie, it was so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was just saying, my neck hurts from agreeing so much. I was like, you can probably see me on the cameras, my head nodding. Thank you so much. That was really, really inspiring and exactly what we needed to hear as well. My question is around restorative conversations. So for a child who's been out of education for a while and they've just come back into a year 6 classroom, for example, as a teacher, what do I need to be mindful of or to ensure in terms of the relationship with that pupil?
What I'd say to this, because I've also been in this situation, is that the first thing is we have to remember that I've said it already, I'm going to say it again, it's not personal to you. That's the first thing. Because I think sometimes we can think, right, if I say this or I do this, then this young person will know it's safe and we'll have this great relationship, whereas it's not personal to you. If they have been excluded from other schools, for example, and for them, their perception may be, well, here I am, how long am I going to last here? What's going to happen, and when are you going to get fed up of me as well? So I think what's important is, and some of the answers I might be repeating what I've already said because it's so important, is start to separate them from their behaviour. I cannot tell you how powerful this is. When you start to say to them, and try to find really specific things about their character. So not, you know, you've done this great work. Try to find things about them, because it is there, that them as a young person, even if it's the tiniest thing, and start just saying those things as much as you can, even if they don't believe you, and not in front of everyone either, even if they don't believe you or that you don't get a response, try and do it as much as possible. And then if you're in a scenario where you're having to talk about the behaviour, you can go back to that thing and say, but that behaviour I didn't like, but you. And that's the type of thing that has such a big impact, where sometimes we think, well, actually it's about if I need to sit down and have this specific conversation with them. It's way more than that. It's about the day-to-day repetition of valuing them for who they are and making them feel, the key words I would say is making them feel seen and heard. If you can make a young person feel seen and heard, and we can all do that because we're in the profession for a reason, that is the most powerful thing that you can do for young people in those positions.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass the mic to Verity.
It's not actually a question, it's just a thank you, because there's a section in your book that you talk about children presenting with defiance and kind of refusing to do the things that we've asked them to do. And I had a scenario last week of a little boy in my class in year 1 presenting in this way, and I've had the audiobook version of your book, and I'd made notes on that section because it was so relevant to literally what happened that day. And it was the week I was off sick, so I wasn't there. And he'd recently moved house, there's lots of things. And I went back in and I kind of, it was I mean, a lot of it aligned with what I was doing anyway through TGMC for years, but it was the kind of say what you see, validate their feelings, give them the choice. And I used it with him. And I think it was less about how I felt doing it, but more my colleagues watching it happen. And I think, and it worked, you know, I mean, it wasn't 100% successful, as you said, but we used it kind of a couple of times over those 3-4 days. And then I met with his parent, and I was able to explain it to them, and they received it so beautifully. And it was just, it kind of transformed this moment with this little boy who was a bit of a runner, and he was kind of sitting on his chair and pushing it literally physically away from his desk, you know, across the classroom, hiding in a corner. And it was just really lovely to watch what could have been awful for everybody involved, just that it was able to be really calm, and he was able to kind of get on with the rest of his day, and actually his face told that whole story. So I just wanted to say thank you, because it was really relevant for me the last week.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, can I just really quickly say, like, hearing things like that make me feel a bit emotional, because they work, these things work, but it takes, it's like I keep saying, it's not about what you do, it's about who you are when you're doing it, and how we perceive and think about things, and about having that, we're not aiming for the perfect young person, we're aiming for those higher level behaviours to be significantly reduced, and to do the bit that we can do in the year that we have them. And I think that's what's so important. Like these things, it's not just, oh, it might work, like it does, but it takes that understanding and that effort and that time and that patience from ourselves. Thank you for sharing that.
Sharon?
Yeah, just another big thank you to you for everything that you do, and all the advice that you give. I think my question sort of ties in with what Verity said. Really, it's what advice do you have for teachers who kind of want to or are embedding this approach within a school system that is the opposite to that? And I think what Verity said, actually having your colleagues see it work in real time, maybe, like you said, providing the evidence or the data as such is that one way of doing it. But when you feel like you're one of a few in, you know, that old school way of doing things, what would your advice be to teachers that are in that situation?
I get this all the time, and I just totally understand where you're coming from. I think the most important thing is what's important is you have to know why you're doing what you're doing and have conviction in what you're doing. And the reason why it's obviously why it's so hard is because if, like you said, you're in an establishment where it's kind of, they don't quite agree or don't quite understand, then you're absolutely right. One of the best ways is to say, well, evidentially, look at what's happening. But what's difficult about that is it takes time. And actually, what's also difficult about that is that when more people are doing more of the same, then actually it's easier and quicker over time. However, and this is one of my biggest challenges in my work at the moment that I'm working on overcoming. This is why I still do the government stuff, even though sometimes this is the reason why, because actually I think it's also important just to, we can't do everything. We can't make everything perfect. We can only do what we can do. And we have to understand that sometimes we're working within a system that's telling us something and we're trying to do something else. So I also think there's that, it doesn't mean like you just don't do it, but it means that you have to also, I have to say this to myself sometimes, I have to work with where I am. If I'm having a conversation with, a particular group of people, I have to say this is where they are, and I have to just keep bringing what I've got until it affects that change, because it will in time, but it just takes time. So I wish I had a very much stronger answer for you, but we're in a system that it is changing. I know it might not feel like it, but it actually is. Behind doors and things are changing, but we are working within a system that is changing slowly over time. So just be kind to yourself, but be confident in knowing what you're doing and why, and collating the evidence if you can.
Stephanie?
My question kind of overlaps with Sharon, because I had a little girl come to me the other day, and I've just moved classes. She was in my class last year. She said to me, "Who are the naughty children in your class?" And she was so excited, and my heart sank. It's not a word I use. It's not a word any of us really use, but it's still there. How do we eradicate that, especially when we know what it does to children's identity?
The first thing I would say is try to model it. Try to model, because sometimes and I used to do this and then I changed it. I used to almost get quite frustrated when I heard certain things and really disheartened. I still do. But now what I realise is actually that frustration didn't lead me anywhere. So I thought, well, what can I do? And I said, well, I can lead by modelling it. I can show the difference. And even as a senior leader, that's what I did. So as a senior leader, if I had, because obviously you do your training with your staff and all of the rest of it, and everyone's different. And so, some staff would adopt it straight away, and other staff would still be losing language that's like the nails on the blackboard, but then I would model it, and I would keep modelling it. And then what I would also do, and it depends on kind of your influence and positions within the school, but what I also did was promote basically CPD training around the whys behind it, because that's the main thing. When adults are repeating their behaviours that might unconsciously impact negatively on a young person, then actually what that's telling us is that they actually need to widen their perspective and maybe need a little bit more information or knowledge around that. Anytime I try to bring something new for my staff, I always made sure I brought the why into it. So I'm not just saying, oh, please stand at the front of the school and smile at all the children. I would tell them the scientific reasonings behind when you smile at that young person, what that does to that young person's brain before they walk in the school. When you say that young person's naughty, what that does for them and their identity, without the blame or shame, but what that does for them and how they feel about themselves, and that perpetuates more of the same behaviour. So when they understood the whys, that's when things started to come. But it takes time.
Charlotte?
Oh, I didn't know where you were, Tan. There she is. Charlotte's a green jumper.
It's pretty much the same question, and I could listen to you for hours actually, because you're amazing. It's really about, and I think you've actually answered it, is that, I mean, we're all advocates, and everybody in this room is completely on board with everything that you're saying. And, I'm getting a bit emotional thinking about it. It's about thinking outside the box, really, of what has come before. But I suppose my bigger question, the reason I think you've answered it is because I think it's all about modelling it, isn't it? It's not just modelling it for the child, but it's modelling it and the big why for all of the adults that work around you. It's not about getting frustrated, is it? Which I tend to do, because people aren't moving fast enough with this whole philosophy. But it's about modelling what you're looking for as a practitioner, isn't it? For yourself and the adults around you. Because I suppose the question with you is that, the big long study that you did and you got great results from it, how did you ensure when these children transitioned back into the establishments that actually it wasn't somebody didn't break it really quickly? Because those kinds, the children that are experiencing these things, they're more likely, tell me if I'm wrong, to break quicker than a more resilient child. How did you ensure over the longevity of the research that didn't happen?
So what I did, I don't know how I did it looking back now, is I utilised somehow some of my staff and I did my own, without any kind of borough support or funding, almost like an outreach to the mainstream schools. And so I honestly don't know how I did it when I think back. And just, it was very slow, but built up over time. And I did kind of like an outreach where if a young person was integrating back into the school, part of the model from my school was that a staff member would go with them. So I extended that and I presented to the schools almost like as if it was a package, and said, and almost it was like a mini modelling from my staff member for the staff members at the school. And then because of my position as a senior leader, when I went to things like the Fair Access Panel, which is where the children and young people were referred to Pupil Referral Units, etc., I then offered my services without any extra time or money. And I offered to do kind of training or drop-in sessions and things like that for other senior leaders within the schools in the borough. And I don't regret any of it because it had such an impact on the borough. It was exhausting, and it worked. But what I would say, and I kind of said this already, but I just want to say it again quickly, is that it's so important to, because I used to get so, at one point I got quite burned out, and I've kind of worked on all of that now, is no one can do everything and no one should do everything. And actually no one knows everything, so we have to work collectively. So I think where we are, you do the best that you can do, whether that's in your classroom, whether that's wider or whatever that is, and we have to try and rest assured that there are also other people doing what they can. So I'm now out of the classroom environment, and now I'm trying to do my bit from a different perspective. So, and there's loads more people like me as well. And so we have to realise that we are a collective, because sometimes we take it all on and we're like, but how can I make all the staff in my school see this? But, you know, things are happening on a wider level, so we can only do the best that we can do.
I think we'll stop there. If you had a question, don't worry, because Marie's going to be here a little bit longer. But just give her a little breather. But just to say a big, big thank you to Marie.
So I have been a Little Coach House rep for about 5 or 6 years now, and they're just a fantastic resource made entirely out of natural materials, wooden materials, for you to support your children at home or at school with their emotional well-being and sort of restoring themselves back to calm through just mindful activities. And my favorite resource from them is the breathing boards. There are so many. There's spirals, there's the infinity, there's rainbows, but it's all about encouraging your children to physically use their body to find their calm. My lot love the spiral one because for them it goes on for a long time, and we've got it in our calm corner, so you can have it in your calm corner, you can have it in your calm box. But they're fantastic resources for just bringing support to your children, to helping them find their calm. So we talked about encouraging our children to be able to do that independently, but this is a great resource for them to be able to do that as well. So I encourage it to have in your calm corners or your calm spaces as just a lovely natural resource for them to use, and it's quick and simple and easy, and it slows them down because they have to use the balls to move it around the boards, and I just love them, so I recommend them. And there's a couple of flyers with a QR code, and there is a cheeky discount for our TGMCers, so have an explore of the tools, have a feel of them, just feel how natural they are, and just how calming they are for you, and the impact that they'll have on your children as well. Yeah.
It really echoes what we've spoken about in both of our chats as well, about giving children those skills, about preventative strategies, about what Dr. Emma was saying about actually helping them find their calm. And I love just what you said, Soph, that they're concrete. Before I knew you were a rep, yeah, I actually bought some, and I was like, what the hell? But like, I got some for Miles and stuff. I do really, really love them. And for those children who you're like, just breathe, and they're like, they need something. They need something physical, and that's how we support them with that. So they are really, honestly brilliant.